working. Good evening. We're even starting right on time. How's that? Good evening. I'm Susan Reverby. I'm the president of the Wellfleet Non-Resident Taxpayers Association, and I greatly appreciate your coming out tonight and giving up an August evening to be with us. As many of you know, the Wellfleet Non-Resident Taxpayer Association is actually 19 years old this summer, and we have been dedicated over the last 19 years to trying to be some form of representation. My joke you've heard before, I'm sure, is that I keep saying we need a t-shirt that says taxation with a little bit of representation for us, and we hope we have been representing your concerns within the town. If you aren't already members, we're one of the better bargains in town, and please meet Lyra outside and check in with her. If you have, first of all, a number of our board members couldn't make it tonight for a number of reasons, but I would like to ask other board members or former board members who are in the room, would you kindly stand up so that other people can see you? If you have questions, please feel free to chat with these three lovely people over here. The board corner, or with Lyra outside, or find me after the meeting. If you are interested in participating with us on the board, and which involves planning some of these meetings over the summer and keeping track of what's going on in the town over the winter, please let us know. We always welcome new members. And we try to provide you with as much information as we can about what's happening in the town. If you have ideas about programs or issues you think we haven't covered, either because we haven't covered them or we haven't covered them sufficiently, please let us know. We can be reached, you can see, I think it's info@wnrto.org is for email. I actually joined the 21st beginning century and started a Facebook page where you can also post things should you be into that form of social media, or you can try writing us. We even have a street address, so, or a post office box. So please feel free to be in touch with us. We know, looking toward next summer, that issues of things like sustainability of the environment, the planning for traffic and bikes, different issues around energy, as well as the tax issue that's always before us, are things that we are considering. So this evening, as has been our intention most years, has been to invite members of the Select Board to join us and to give each of them 10 minutes or so to speak about what they think are the issues facing the town, and then mainly to spend most of the meeting giving them a chance to hear from you directly. So unfortunately, two members of the board, Michael DeVasto and Janet Reinhardt, could not be here, but we do have Helen Miranda Wilson, Justina Carlson, and Kathleen Baker with us. So, Bacon, I'm sorry, excuse me, Bacon, I knew that, sorry. Thank you, stand corrected. So what I'm gonna do is ask all three of them to please come up and sit at the table, and then just to come up one at a time, and please take your 10 minutes. I'll sit where I was before. If it's going more than 10 minutes, I will start gesticulating madly. I don't have a large hook, but I really wanna try to make sure we keep to the time so that you get a chance to really speak. And also, for the purposes of the town and for our members who couldn't be here, we actually do film. We make a video of the meeting, and it will be available on the link in the town website. Okay? So would all three of you like to come up, take a seat? And you can start in any order that you decide among yourselves. That's fine, I don't care. Okay, thanks. Let me just get my cane so I don't kill myself here. And
Susan, because they don't have name tags, they will introduce each one of them.
I will, yes. Okay, good enough, thank you. Okay.
Hi, I'm Justina CARLSON, a member of the Wellfleet Board of Selectmen, and I wanted to thank Susan Reverby and the entire Non-Resident Taxpayers Association for inviting the Wellfleet Select Board to talk to you. As a new member last year, it was really inspirational to meet with this group. You represent the backbone, part of the backbone of Wellfleet, and what I heard and took away was how much love for Wellfleet there is in the town, how much everyone in the room does for Wellfleet, philanthropically and otherwise, how much commitment you have to the town, and how many of you have been coming here for so long. I heard decades, I heard 30 years, I heard from childhood. So you're an integral part of our town, and it was inspirational to talk to you last year, and I'm looking forward to it this year. And your tax dollars help fund our town, and we're grateful for that. One thing I really took away from last year's meeting was a comment from the audience. You told us all these problems. Can't you tell us some good news? And the shoulders were kind of slumping, and I felt terrible. And I thought about it, and as a member of the select board, it's our job to handle problems, and believe me, we hear them all the time, and we try to think about how to handle challenges, and sometimes we do. But the good thing about this year is there's so much good news in our community. I think a symbol of it is the spruces, that a group of concerned citizens took it upon themselves to have pruned and revitalized. We all passed the Historical Society, and it's not a government initiative. I'm sure many here contributed time or money to that. But as a member of the select board, I want to talk about how inspirational our town meeting was this year in April, because the town came together to approve 3 real milestone initiatives. The first you probably heard about is dredging. And our town administrator, Dan Hort, who works very hard, deserves a shout out. He went to Washington, he worked on the federal funding part of that, as did Janet Reinhardt and the dredging committee. But at town meeting, we needed to approve the local funding, and we did so as a community, the $7.5 million funding for dredging, not all in one year. And it's incredibly hard to get the federal funding. I went up to a management conference in earlier this year, and I was picking the brains of other towns. I talked to the Duxbury mayor, and she just kept saying, you gotta work, you gotta keep working, you gotta keep working. And then they lost it at the last minute to San Francisco, and Wellfleet got ours. So this is good news. We can finally dredge our harbor, and the excitement in town meeting was palpable. Second really important initiative that was approved in town hall was regarding affordable housing, and this wasn't a spending initiative. This was the commitment of town land at Lawrenceville Road, and that will begin the process of building a larger scale housing development. We lagged last of all the towns on the Cape in the percentage of our housing stock that's affordable. So this was a major commitment by the community to get started with affordable housing, and it passed unanimously in the room. We heard many moving speeches about how we need to keep young families in town, we need to provide for the elderly who can't afford housing, and to preserve the diversity of our community. So that was really great news to hear in the room. And finally, I want to just briefly touch on the purchase of 200+ acres of tidal land for from the Hilda Trust, which was hotly debated in the town meeting. But that represents not only an ecological goal, but the protection of our independent shellfishing industry, which is not only part of our heritage, but it's an important source of local jobs, and many communities spend on initiatives to attract local industry, and we do have a base of local jobs here in the shellfishing industry. Plus, I think it adds to the character of our town, and I think if we want to have not just Porsches in the future on our roads, but pickup trucks, then I think we all care about our diverse character and our heritage and where we've come from. So I promised to talk about good news, since we didn't apparently do enough of that last year. And I can tell you the debate was serious. The atmosphere was serious in the room, people take these decisions seriously. People take their tax dollars seriously, and it was a real sense of the community coming together. And it's a pleasure to share it with you tonight and then hear your feedback later. So thank you.
Thank you. Which one of you would like to go next? Kathleen, you going to go next?
I'm Kathleen Bacon, and I did do a little outline for tonight, but I forgot my glasses, so I can't read any of it. That's what happens.
Kathleen, you want mine?
No, I'm okay. To echo back to Justina said about town meeting, it was a very significant town meeting for the town of Wellfleet, in that there were many progressive initiatives that were passed. Not without much thought and without much debate. But the initiatives that were passed all had an element of sustainable community. So that should give us all hope, for the future, that we will have a sustainable community with young people, elderly people living here in Wellfleet. 95 Lawrence Road is a 9.5-acre town-owned land that abuts the elementary school. It didn't come to us easily. It was a bit of a fight, but our housing authority was able to convince town voters to grant a feasibility study just to see what we could do up there with regard to affordable housing. That feasibility study came back with no red flags, not one red flag. To have that in a community is pretty significant, because everywhere you go, people are building these units that are offending neighbors and causing a controversy. It's just the way the culture is right now. So we're real lucky that the feasibility study says good to go. So now we're developing an RFP to site that land and to see how many units we can actually deliver. There'll be mixed income and all rent units in an area that's abutting an elementary school, which we dearly need to support. So I think it's a perfect project. What else? We had two other initiatives in Wellfleet, which I'll discuss just briefly, that were brought by the Recycling Committee. One was to ban the municipal purchase of plastic water bottles. Anybody have this going on in their town where they live? Mm-hmm. It's a pretty big initiative, and it was pretty well presented to us very early on before town meeting, and I was able to get to all the Board of Health meetings and recycling meetings to really hear about why this was so important. And if you live here like we do 365 days a year, you are witnessing what plastic is doing to our environment. It is killing us. It is suffocating us, particularly the marine life. What you find on the beach in the wintertime would just, blow your mind. Oddly enough, it's all coming from what I perceive to be the fishing industry. Zip ties, mesh bags, plastic fittings. Here's a group that we think is, out there and has a real respect and reverence for the environment. And a lot of pollution is coming, plastic pollution is coming from the fishing industry. And because of where we are, we're really getting the brunt of it. So this is an initiative that is a policy now for the town of Wellfleet, that we will not purchase water in plastic bottles, any municipal department. That doesn't mean we won't serve it at the senior center, because I'm drinking out of one now. But that's a good thing. We also banned balloons. We banned the sale of balloons, the havoc that they also leave on our beaches and with our marine life, particularly the ribbon at the end of a balloon, so on and so forth. Not trying to say to a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, you're naughty if you have a balloon, but we have to get really serious about this plastic thing. We really do. So 2 very progressive initiatives that have to deal with the environment, and I think that's a good thing. We saw a toxic algae bloom at Gull Pond very early on in the season. And, you know, you get that information from your health agent, and it's very alarming. And you think, why is this happening? Why is it happening here? We are, and we have been, flushing the good down with the bad for a long, long time. Title V septics do not treat nitrogen. Nitrogen is still loading into our aquifer, and we are a single source aquifer. And this nitrogen load is going to create water quality problems. And that's precisely what happened at Gull Pond. Nitrogen was to blame for a cyanobacteria that was found in the center of the pond very early on. Working with the young woman who was there the day that they found this bacteria and tested it. And she told me it's a very serious bacteria. It can create, it's a neurotoxin. It creates damage to the nerves. Epileptic seizures, Parkinson's disease, so on and so forth. And you think this is in your town. You know, it's really hard to wrap your head around that. This is what we're looking at in the future. I'm not all, you know, bubblegum and roses up here. There's some very serious issues that we're going to be dealing with in the future. And it's enormously inspiring to see all of you out here tonight, because you're non-residents, you're taxpayers, you all have this dear and deep affection for Wellfleet, enough to show up on a Thursday night in August and make us feel welcome. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, if the first one was Justina Carlson and the second one was Kathleen Bacon, I'm Helen. I use my middle name because there's another Helen Wilson in South Wellfleet. You should know that. So, I love you guys. I've been coming to your meetings for a long time. And although your specific organization has only been going for 19 years, if any of you remember the talk that David Wright gave, the tradition of people who have a home somewhere else and don't live here full time has been going on since the 30s.
Right.
And although it's true, you can only vote in one place, right? And a lot of you choose to vote at home, which is not here domiciled. This is still your home. And in this town, if you want to be on a board or committee, you can participate. And let me tell you, land use regulation, like on the planning board or the Board of Health or the ZBA or the water commissioners, non-residents, if they can show up for the meetings and apply themselves, can participate fully and make votes which go on the ground here. And I believe in that because I have served on some boards and committees with people who, in one case, drove from New York to make an advisory committee's meeting every single time. And we met at times every 2 weeks, okay? So there is that kind of participation, and I'm going to say it again. The votes that you make in those meetings go on the ground. I'd like to bring up some good news first, which is the state has energized something that's been there from the feds under the Clean Water Act for a very long time. It's a section of the Clean Water Act, which is Section 208. And municipalities in Massachusetts are being held to accountability and mitigation of non-point and also point pollution going into the watersheds. And Wellfleet has stepped up to this and has had a committee working on it very well for many years, the wastewater committee, to address this. And it includes people on the ponds, it includes anybody that's anywhere near, surface water. And it's a very good thing, and it's moving forward. And the health agent, conservation agent is very applied to it. The second thing that's going on is very interesting, and it affects everybody to the north of us, and actually a lot of people to the south of us. And it's an issue that affects what goes on in the most dangerous part in Wellfleet of Route 6. 2 agencies from the state are planning to make changes. One of them, the very necessary and wonderful bike path, which starts at the bridge, okay, and is a good thing. But when they got to Wellfleet, that state agency, which is called the DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, didn't really have, in the early stages of thinking about it, a big, adequate dialogue with the municipality. And although they were working with the Department of Transportation, who's in charge of Route 6, there was a lack of communication about it that we are only now beginning to try to address. And the option that the 2 agencies came up with is something that our Bike and Walkways Committee and over 1,000 people who have signed a petition want to have a closer look at and a little more consideration applied to, because that area, as we all know, is very dangerous, not just in the summer. And quite a few years ago, before all this, the Select Board, in response to a straw that broke the camel's back, which was the death of a young man here who was riding his bicycle to work, in that intersection, he was killed. There's so many accidents there, there's so many near accidents, there's so many fender benders. And the Select Board then said, you know what, we need to fix that intersection. We need to have a better stoplight, we need to rethink the lanes there. And we went to the Department of Transportation, the DOT, and they came back to us with a proposal for a roundabout there. Oh, dear. We had a great big public hearing in this room. It was a very healthy meeting, right? People got up and testified, and there was a lot of dialogue, and there were a lot of people from the Department of Transportation, and they got it, and they took that off the table. But to date, they still have not dealt with that intersection. So I'm just reporting to you, it's not a grim, terrible, corrupt situation, but it's a situation that needs improvement, more communication, and work, and it's sort of ongoing. It's the breaking news, actually, right now. Starting from about the post office, heading towards Provincetown, heading north, going past PJ's, there are a whole lot of curb cuts. There's the, boat place. There's Idle Times. There's the mobile station. There's the turnoff to Main Street. And I'm a, fearless driver, but I'm also very careful. I turn off the radio when I go through that intersection. And just please all be careful there. That's all I have to say. And I call it the danger zone. And I'm not alarmist. I'm not trying to be sort of dramatic about it. But it really is. There are a lot of near misses. There are a lot of fender benders. And there are people who come here in the summer, and it's wonderful, and they don't really know where they're going because they haven't been here. Or they're hungry, or the kids are screaming in the back seat, and it's just dangerous. So the town is working on it. I hope that it results in some good changes. The last thing, and I just spent all day at this meeting, which I go to once a month, the Herring River project is progressing. And the scientists and the tech people in the Herring, they just renamed themselves Herring River Restoration Technical Team, HERT, is preparing a submission for the Cape Cod Commission to look at, and, you know, spending a lot of time on budgeting where the money's going to come from. And the last thing I want to say is the, you know, most recent news is that there have been 4 memorandums of understanding with the people who are sort of co-parenting this area that's going to be restored. It used to be Truro, Wellfleet, and the National Seashore, an intergovernmental group, which is quite unusual for the seashore to join, because they can do whatever they want, the feds. But Truro is not now participating because they just decided they didn't have enough. You know, they're supportive of the project, but they're not going to be making decisions with the park and the town of Wellfleet because they just don't have enough property in there. You know, they're going to be property owners who participate. So we just recently, the Select Board signed a 4th memorandum of understanding, and you can access information about this on the Friends of the Herring River site. So that's all from me.
Thank you. So the rest of the time, first I want to thank them for the succinctness of the comments. It's the usual jokes about politicians are that they aren't succinct, but I'm really appreciative of your ability to summarize these really crucial issues quite quickly. So we have a mic back there. Would you please, because many of us actually are hard of hearing and the room has a high ceiling, so would you kindly go to the mic, say your name please, and then address your questions to whomever you would like to ask, or all 3 of them, and then they can decide to answer. Okay, sure.
Hello.
You can lower it, I think, a little bit, so there you go.
Name is Jean Burke. So if you're familiar with going up Pole Dyke Road towards the transfer station and just south of the Trotting Park neighborhood, there's a business. Well, let's just put it this way. They've only recently named it. There's a sign there that says The Hideaway. And it's my view that it seems all the homes along Pole Dyke, that's a residential zoning area. And I don't know that this outfit has permission to conduct this business. I'm wondering if you might address that. And my other point is to do with, on Facebook, there being a Wellfleet open space kind of group. And my concern about their commentary just recently, I guess there was a meeting at the library, and it was a really strong draw for people to attend, and someone had complained about half the seats being saved. And so some of the commentary in that whole chain referred to the entitled, and I didn't know who that meant, but I just kind of read it. I don't comment, so I wonder if you could also comment on that.
To your first concern, the property that you're talking about is owned by the uncle of Michael DeVasto, the selectman. It's his business. He's an oysterman, and he's using that part of the property to for his equipment and so on and so forth. I'm not sure if it's against a bylaw or zoning, but you'd have to talk to Justin Post, our building inspector. And the second thing, what was the second thing again?
About the Facebook page.
Yeah, there was a talk at the library by Helena Kennedy, also a summer resident here at Wellfleet, and she's a barrister. And she gave a talk about Brexit. And she absolutely could fill the library 5 times. I mean, if you've ever heard her, she's awesome. And I keep telling the library, you know, she needs like Watt Theater ×3. but she insists on doing it in that small venue. She loves it. But now people have gotten in the habit on that particular talk to save not just a few seats, but we're talking over a dozen seats. And it was a rainy evening and people showed up and they couldn't get seats. The Board of Library Trustees immediately met and decided on a policy that there will be no more saved seats. It'll be first come, first serve.
I just want to say something briefly about your second comment, because I have started to monitor the open space committee. So there were also some comments about a lawsuit that has started again from people who are abutters on Old Kings Highway who are trying to stop the particular formulation of a Habitat for Humanity units that are going in there. And so that caused, and all of them are non-residents. So that caused a bit of a stir on those pages too. So I've tried really hard to keep monitoring those pages and to comment back when possible and explain that it's like somebody called us tourists, which is the bad word I know that gets used in Provincetown for the non-resident taxpayers. So I explained that we weren't tourists and, blah, blah, and that there were divisions even in our organization around what people thought about this lawsuit, and they shouldn't paint all of us with one brush. So I've been trying to be polite, but also to monitor any of that kind of commentary. And I urge any of you to do that. I mean, I'm trying to start a fight, but I think it's worth at least answering when names like that get thrown about, that we say something back. And reasonable people will be reasonable, and unreasonable people, frankly, are unreasonable. So you can't reach them all. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Carlos Molina. Justina, you mentioned about the dredging, $7.5 million. Was that the number of the grant that Wellfleet has received for the dredging, or the cost?
As I understand it, that's the local share that Wellfleet is responsible for. We can't qualify for federal funding if we don't show,
It's state funding.
yeah.
So
I can explain it too.
Yeah.
The total for our part of it, the inner mooring basin, back towards Duck Creek, is $15 million. The federal channel will be done by the Corps of Army Engineers on their dime for just a little over $5 million. Wellfleet had to show the state good faith showing that we would come up with half of that $15 million. And it's our hope in doing so, the state will match the grant with another $7.5 million. Nothing gets spent, nothing gets borrowed or spent until the dredging starts.
may I add to this?
Sure.
Yeah. For many years, these cycles, dramatic cycles, of needing to do a huge dredge have occurred. I've experienced 2 of them already. And the town is seriously looking into, and has for a number of years now, maintenance dredging. And that can happen in a number of ways. But we're kind of sick and tired of these huge cycles and needing huge amounts of money. And it impacts the shellfishing, a lot of the shellfishing beds, in a very seriously bad way. Not the whole harbor, but a good part of it with what's called black mayonnaise, which is a muddy silt. So we're looking into maintenance dredging more seriously than we've ever done before.
And I'm just going to tag on to that no sooner do we get this project completed, the federal channel and the inner mooring basin, boots on the ground have to be ready to start that maintenance dredging. Because of our geography here, water and sediment comes out and the ebb tide is not strong enough to pull it back out. So we're going to be boots on the ground with a maintenance dredge plan as soon as this project's completed. Having waited this long, silt keeps filling in, and the price keeps going up because we have to haul it out. It's got to be removed.
Yeah, I'm totally supportive of it. But I'm just curious, what would be the financial impact to us homeowners in terms of taxation? I assume.
I think we figured it was something like $32 or $35 a year. I didn't think it was too egregious. to get the harbor done. But I don't, I mean, because I really think about these things for not just the non-resident taxpayers, but for a young family that might try to want to live here. I mean, if we strangle them with a tax bill, it's not going to work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Phyllis?
Good evening, and thank you for coming. I'm Phyllis Breatholz. I'm at 5 Bartlett Road. I have 2 questions, both of them relating to the transfer station. I understand that there's been some talk about some solar panels being installed, and I'm wondering if there is some way, how residents, both full-time and part-time residents, can in any way participate, help, get the benefit from. So that's one question. And the other one is that I've recently been made aware of a composting project. I'm not sure where exactly it
The
is.
transfer station.
Yeah, at the transfer station. And is the intention to make it available that we can bring
Yes.
our compost, and then this will be decomposed, and we can then get compost to bring back to our
Yes.
gardens? Is that so? And is that already in motion? Has that
Yes.
already started? So those are 2 questions related to the transfer station. Thank you.
Yeah, and with regard to the solar panels that are going to go on top of the landfill, the Energy Committee it's tipping into being actually done. I talked with Richard Elkin, the chair.
Everything's dotted and
Yeah,
done. It is.
and the best thing to do, because there are quite a few interesting details, and you should all be aware of them, is somebody in this organization contact the Energy Committee, which is now called the Energy and Climate Change Committee, because it's all related, and get the details and put them on your website so you
Okay.
can all sort of drink them up.
We can do that. It's Richard Elkin, right?
Richard
I
Elkin,
know how to reach him. It's okay, Phyllis, I get it.
yeah.
Yeah, so the solar, I'm not sure if you're looking to try and get, solar from that. This is going to take care of all our municipal needs. And we have a ton of it left over, which we sell back to the company. And we'll be under a 10-year lease with a company that's going to maintain it. The company that's building it is going to maintain it as well, so.
Good. And your second question was about composting?
Composting's good to go up there, yeah. It's a great thing. Yeah, yeah,
So that we can bring, so what Phyllis said was correct, Kathleen, that we can bring it?
yeah. Yeah.
Can I add one thing about the composting? So, hello, Wellfleet has rats now.
Yes.
And if you have compost bins at home,
Yes.
go to the hardware store, get some hardware cloth, okay, and put it under your compost bin. Okay? It really makes a difference.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Tom Steiner, and I live at 1 Indian Neck Road, and I'm a beekeeper, and I have 3 beehives, and it's awful hard to keep the bees alive with all that's going on in the environment and everything. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was out in my backyard, and I heard spraying across the marsh, and I looked over, and I saw the mosquito squad with their guns blasting. So I went over there, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm spraying." I said, "Well, you have no right to spray into the conservation land." And he said, "I just sprayed in the edges of conservation land." And I said, "That's not right. You don't own that property. You shouldn't be spraying there." So my question is, can this company just go around spraying anywhere they feel like spraying without the town has no control over how they spray and where they spray? Can they spray on other people's property? This spray is drifting over, and you're worried about the water supply. What effect does this have on our water?
All right.
Sir,
Thank you,
I am a beekeeper. The label is the law when you apply pesticides.
Pardon me?
The label is the law. However, you heard me say I'm a beekeeper for 20 years, right?
Right.
You cannot have any drift onto somebody else's property. That is totally illegal. If the air is moving at all and bringing it 1 inch over your property line, that's illegal. And
I spoke with the owner on the phone because.
hold on a minute,
okay.
may I keep going here?
Yeah.
We've had, on town property, we have decided that you can't use pesticides. However, the National Seashore and people on their own private property can do it. And my line about this, I use no pesticides on my property, and I do just fine, because the birds don't die, the organisms in the soil don't die. And if I have bugs, and I have a lot of bugs, guess what? Other organisms come and eat them and keep them in balance. That's my approach to it. But you all have consciences. And I would read up about pesticides and also go to the town website and find the excellent panel that was held on this subject with conservation and health agents from the whole Provincetown, Truro, and Wellfleet, and I think Eastham too, were here. The chief apiarist for the state was here. The entomologist from Barnstable County was here. And it was an excellent panel. There was a lot of information about this. And the punchline is, no, you cannot spray on other people's property. And I hate to say it, I regret to say that this company has had citations from the Pesticide Board in Massachusetts in past years because they have sprayed over lot lines. So.
But the town can't do anything about it?
No. The Pesticide Board in the state of Massachusetts, unlike a number of other states like Maine, municipalities cannot say it can't happen here. That's the state of Massachusetts, and
It's a Mass General law.
it's the Pesticide Board is the ultimate decider. In Maine, municipalities can make this decision, and two legislators, Sarah Peake and Julian Sear, are concerned about this and have been trying for years to have it be possible for the people in a town to say, we don't want to have pesticides, we don't want to have these pesticides, in other words, to make an informed decision about it together. So
that we could ban it completely.
or not, in other words, but it would be up to us, And we can't do that here. And there's something very wrong with that.
So one of the things to think about this is, for those of us who are Massachusetts to speak to our representatives, because obviously it's a statewide issue that affects all, and letting there be control. And I just one more question to you, sir. When you talked to the owner of the company, what did he say to you?
He says that the chemicals that he uses only kills mosquitoes, and I said, I doubt it very much that it can pick out one insect and just kill that insect and all the rest of them live.
Yes, sir.
I mean, and it's just unbelievable that this is the way he thinks that this is the way it works.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Everything gets wiped out, and
Yeah, of course it does.
it's sad because if a person's trying to, do the right thing and keep bees, and it's just incredible that the government doesn't take care of that.
Right. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Yes, sir.
Yes, hello. I'm Mark Donowitz. We live on Lieutenant Island. And I just have an informational question. Could you catch us up what's going to happen with marijuana, medical marijuana, and what's going to be monitored and what's going to be done? Because just
Boy, we're going to have a lot of it. Five in the queue. I don't know how that happened, but Provincetown's probably going to be the first one out of the gate. Originally, I thought it would be Eastham, but Provincetown is, they're on the licensing board right now. They're on the table. They're just waiting for, a signature. So I'm going to look to Provincetown to see, is it going to be a line 3 miles long, or how they're going to deal with traffic, or, that type of thing. The interesting thing is the marijuana cannabis group, state group that's overseeing marijuana, is now thinking about, in addition to licensing it for retail and medical use, they're going to pick and choose several people that are in the queue for a license to see if they'll do a social, a cafe. So we've got that to be thinking about. Is that going to happen here in Wellfleet? But it's something that the Cannabis Control Board is thinking about. We have it in South Wellfleet at the South Wellfleet General Store. We have it next to a vacant lot next to VR's restaurant. We have it at the former antique emporium known as Rust Stored next to Dunkin' Donuts. We have it at the corner of the lights going into Main Street at the former TD Bank. And we have it at the foot of Bank Street in the center of Wellfleet.
So what about monitoring all this? I mean, how is the town going to check, if there's more crime or danger coming out of that?
May I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the same way they do with liquor stores, with the additional intense scrutiny that these establishments have to, they have to jump through hoops you wouldn't believe. And just to be sure that everybody understands, none of these places are open yet. So all the places Kathleen so accurately listed have come before the Select Board for approval of what's called a community host agreement. And then they go to the state to be licensed. And we have, because of a vote at town meeting, the Select Board can, at its discretion, once we've granted a community host agreement to 3 different applicants, we can limit the number at our discretion. And we're in the process of having a policy drafted that gives us a set of criteria. So I'm hoping a lot of places open on the Outer Cape, so no one of them is intensely used. I hope it's competitive. I hope the people that need marijuana for medical use, and there are quite a lot of them who have intense pain issues, or like my niece had chemotherapy, okay, really needed it. And there are a whole lot of people growing marijuana legally just for their own use here in Wellfleet. I'm not a stoner, I always say that, but it's here to stay, and the scrutiny it's going to get and is getting is way more than liquor stores.
Yeah, I'm a professor of medicine at Hopkins, and we use that for sure.
Yeah.
And we also have these medical marijuana places, and as I drive by, the characters that are there that are not the kind of characters you would like to be associating with. They look very dangerous. So I just hope that Wellfleet is putting into an effect that in some way they're going to monitor this, and we'd hate to have Wellfleet turn into a less pleasant place to be.
Well, there will be marijuana establishments. If you're taking the bus from Hyannis, for example, or driving, there's easier towns to go to. And I think that because we're on the Outer Cape, that hopefully will weed out some of the characters you're talking about. I have 2 teenage stepkids. I'm not wild about marijuana establishments in our town, but it is a new era. And I do think that some of the undesirable, it's an expensive town to live here, and I think some of the people that might be, coming in from elsewhere, they're not going to come all the way to Wellfleet to get their pot when they can get it,
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right, too.
Right. One other just point about, at least in Denver, where my niece and nephew live, there's still a fairly active street trade because it's cheaper still on the street.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't get the taxation. So it may, wherever people are buying it now may continue, but I think it's right. And people aren't going to drive all the way out here. There's enough all over Massachusetts, believe me, or will be soon. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Karen Dupre, and I'm over at the Seashells on Chequesset Neck. My question was also about the dispensaries in Wellfleet, and I was wondering, I think you explained that there are 5 due to come online, and you're looking at 3 seriously. I'm wondering what the other towns, you talk about the other towns further along up the Cape, whether those towns are also, if you know for sure, that everyone along the way is going to offer, because I've heard that Chatham is saying no, Harwich is saying no, Orleans is saying no, and we have 5 due to come online. And I'm wondering if we're kidding ourselves about other towns on the Cape accepting this. And I too would hate to see Wellfleet become the place for everyone to come and get their pot. And it seems like for such a small town, I mean, we're a small town, 5 dispensaries in a small town seems like a lot.
2 minutes, 1 second. I think I agree with you, and I think that, you know, we're really going to have to see how this plays out. But honestly, for Wellfleet, being off the grid the way we are, I think people here in Wellfleet are going to continue to grow their own and not shop at these places. Right. So I don't know how they're all going to make money.
Well, we can't control that, who grows it themselves.
I just
What
don't
we
know how
can
they're all going to
control-
make this money.
Well, I wonder too, and
I will tell you, there are 13 established marijuana retail outlets in the state of Massachusetts right now, 13. And they've just run the numbers. Of the 13, so far, $295 million between the 13 outlets.
In statement, in the money that goes to the municipalities?
No, that's what they've made.
well, that does go to the question,
Yeah,
you know, is that how we're looking to make our money for the town?
no.
Okay, so, you know, I just wonder again how that decision is made to have 5 in our small town, where that decision is made, and what are we considering when we consider 5 in a very small town like Wellfleet?
Now,
Just a thought.
may I answer?
Yes.
Provincetown supposedly is going to have 7, but you understand something. Not all of these organizations, may continue, because a lot of businesses, as somebody very smart once said to me, most businesses fail.
Right.
But the point is, this is a clean business. In other words, it doesn't put a lot of wastewater into the ground. Nobody's going to be growing it commercially here. There are 5 farmers who have made a consortium, I think they call it. Mm-hmm. But they were growing marijuana anyway. And the tax dollars are very appreciated, and I want to remind you all of something. Prohibition, and we have, including seasonal liquor stores, including liquor stores that only sell beer and wine, we have 8 different, at my last count, liquor stores here, and I'm very lucky. I can take it or leave it with alcohol and marijuana, but liquor stores and alcoholism is just as much of a problem. And listening carefully to people I've known who work in the rescue department and who work in this police department and others, it's arguably easier, not that anybody should be under the influence of anything when they're driving, as far as I'm concerned, okay? And they shouldn't be eating, and they shouldn't be sleepy. I mean, driving is dangerous. I'm not actually kidding. You know, people die. But alcohol is probably a worse problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we're trying in our society to move away from alcohol, and a lot of stress on not drinking, over drinking with Ubers and everything else. I'm not saying, and I hope, and I know you're not saying, let's take marijuana the way of alcohol and driving, but it's also very difficult at this point to monitor that for people driving. It's not, you know, a breathalyzer. It's not, they're having a lot of trouble coming to grips with that. And again, I wonder how the decision to have 5 in our small town is made,
So
and if we can reconsider that going forward.
Right, I think what you're suggesting is
Offline.
really worth our thinking about for a program next year and to
Yes.
try to really
Or
keep
or-
on top of
or
what's
with
going
them
on.
given, are they given that they're
No, as they
definitely
explain-
coming online?
I want to just clarify something.
Yes.
We've had 5 organizations come before us, and they have to get a community agreement from us. There's a long set of state hoops. Not all of them are, in my opinion, have the management capacity and the funding to make it. So 5, it is not a given right now that 5 are going to
Okay.
open. There's 5 potential
Thank you.
ones, and one of them already has had a complete management change. And I mean, really, we had 2 local groups come in, and we wanted to give them a chance. One is going to be very discreet in the old Jules Besch building in the back. A fine family, a fine young man opening it, the kind of establishment we might want. The second in the old bank. The other 3, I'm not so fond of, and I don't expect them all to make it. Again, I'm going to reiterate, I'm the parent of stepchildren. I try to talk to them about not smoking weed. I'm the dinosaur sometimes in the debate. I'm not happy about it, but I don't think we're going to get 5, and I think we're going to be as careful as possible. Don't think the select board is all like, yeehaw, you know.
I
This is a
hope
tough
that's true.
issue, and I agree with what,
And it goes to chocolate, and it goes to lollipops, and it
Yep.
goes to a lot of other things.
it's a
that-
brave new world. I'm not so happy about it, but we've got 2 great local establishments that are really responsible. A 3rd guy who came in, well-funded, he seems sincere, and then 2 others that we haven't even heard from them lately.
Okay,
So
Thank
let's
you.
not overstate the risk.
okay,
Okay.
well, thank you for that.
All right, thank you very much. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Aguirre Molina over on Somerset, and this was not what I was going to talk about, but as a professor of public health, I'm glad we're having this conversation, or that it's on the table, because I know we already have a significant alcohol problem on the Cape, and this whole issue of psychotropic drugs is just a whole other. So, but I just want to say I'm glad you're thinking about it. Somebody's being quite thoughtful, and the discussion is on. What I did want to share with you is two issues. One is a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I volunteered at the Prez Hall, and it was terrific because Bosch, who I understand was a Wellfleet kid, he's a DJ, a big deal all over the world, performed. And as a result, because he is a Wellfleet kid, a bunch of Wellfleet kids, meaning who had lived, raised, and came to support him. It was a great event. Anyway, I got to talking with them, which was really nice because you really get to talk to real Wellfleet kids as a vacationer or as a homeowner. And the long and the short of it was that all of them, first of all, they were really nice because I said, we're those non-resident taxpayers. Said, oh, you're the cool people who give our schools money so that we were able to do blah, blah, blah. So that was really quite interesting that the kids realized we made some contribution to the town. I said, yeah, we do, taxpayers. The point here is that none of them live in town anymore. This issue of housing came up. But it's not really so much about housing, it's about the economy and what holds them here. There's really nothing to hold. It's a one-company town, it's vacation, it's summer. So that all of them felt that there was nothing here. There was one young man, he said, well, he said, I'm living in my grandparents' house. He says, I convinced them not to sell it. And I do carpentry. He did a whole lot of different things. So the issue of the economy, I think, has to be thought about also in addition to housing. No question about it. So, and I don't know what that means. I'm putting it out there only because these kids raised it for me. And they were all doing things in Connecticut and New York, New Jersey, in the region so that they could come back and see their aging family. But it's really about there's no work here to keep them. So that was one issue. The other issue that I do want to raise and ask a question about is related to this great stuff you're doing with plastic and balloons and bottles. We are not we don't live in a silo, though. What are the rest of the towns surrounding us doing? I mean, because we're doing very progressive
Same.
and good stuff. So is there some synergy here? Other towns are picking up comparable? Oh, that's good. Okay, that's what I was going to ask then. What else is going on?
Wellfleet was the second town to approve this bylaw change or policy with regard to plastic, so I'm very proud of that. But there are now 13 towns that are all doing the same thing.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Congratulations on getting that done.
To get back to the jobs thing, it's really a regional concern. Two employers in Wellfleet, the two largest employers, are the town of Wellfleet itself and Outer Cape Health.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, how do you change? The question is, what do you do? What makes Wellfleet wonderful, that it is a wonderful vacation and beach town, and all that it does during the season. But then what do you do to maintain the character? It's a real challenge, you know.
I think regionally we could do something on a much larger scale. I would like to see solar panels made and built on the Cape. It's an industry that's at the top of its peak right now. And why this country is shipping it over to India is beyond me.
And it's not just about because they were talking about you can get job as laborers per se in the construction and all that, but it's beyond that. It was, other tech work.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Let Helen answer, and
The
then let's
single
move.
biggest industry in this town, affecting over 10% of the town directly, is the shellfishing industry. And that's hard work, not for everybody. It's basically farming and, fishing in the wild. But
You're self-employed.
you're self-employed or you work for somebody who has a small family farm. But that's a vibrant industry here.
And it can accommodate additional workforce? Because, but the other thing is, not everybody wants to go into that industry, and that's the issue.
I really appreciate the question, but I want to
fine.
ask, there's 4 other people standing behind you, 5 or 6, so I'd like to move it on. Oh, you come up and speak to these select persons afterward, okay? Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim Campen. I live on Hidden Acres Lane, just north of the Public Works. And I have a couple questions related to the residential property tax exemption that you approved last September. And the first one is just generally, I'm not going to make a speech for or against it, but generally, what are your reflections or insights, or what have you learned during the first year of its implementation? And secondly, the goal, as I understand it, is to help people who are struggling, full-year residents who are struggling to get by in Wellfleet. And as constituted, the residential tax exemption is for homeowners. It doesn't do anything for renters. Provincetown, as you probably know, has gotten the state approval to extend the residential tax exemption to landowners who rent to full-time residents. And I wonder if that's something that you're thinking of doing in Wellfleet.
Thank you.
Do you know about that?
Shouldn't have told them, Jim.
That was an idea. So we had a good, healthy discussion about this in one of our meetings last year. I did not vote for it because, frankly, I don't know what your finances are. You may be as unable to accommodate extra tax dollars being paid as some of our residents, and I know that we have full-time residents who may not even live here even 10 months, but they're domiciled, and they have lots of money. And I voted against, we had forever had the same tax for everybody, and last year the board is trying, this new thing, and we voted, and, it was a healthy vote. And let's see what's going to happen this year, but I'm looking forward to the data. In other words, we don't have it yet. We don't have the data yet.
I voted for it. I think it's a terrific policy because of the way that the taxes, overall receipts of the town are structured. As I recall the numbers, a $700,000 house would have about a $200 a year increase. So we're not talking about punitive measures. And the beauty of it is a $300,000 house would have a $700 a year break. So not only does it give a break to the local economy, but it's not that much pain to the one side and a significant advantage to the other. And I think diversity in our community is one thing that has drawn us here. If you pass Payne Hollow, there's still Paynes living here who were here before the Revolutionary War. We have a history in this community, and as we have had higher property values and have our Wellfleet woods disappear into second homes, the impact on the local community has been profound. And the local community, many have suffered. Their sons and daughters can't afford homes. And I think that the policy is offered by the state of Massachusetts as an option to localities, and we all, I believe in the ability of Wellfleet to step up and do our part.
Hi, I'm Steve Bliss. I live over on the Bayside off of Summit Avenue. I have a mundane question, no deep philosophical significance, about beach parking. Just wondering if there's any progress has been made around the issue. And one significant issue is a lot of people do pack up their cars and their kids or grandkids and drive over to the beach and burn gasoline and annoy people who live near there, and then turn around and drive up and down Ocean Drive. And it's kind of an unmanageable mess. A very simple idea that I'm sure has been proposed is to, I think it was even on the survey, is to post online or with a webcam or something to let people know if there is a line at 9 in the morning at Newcomb. So any progress on that issue? Thank you.
One of our beach parking task force members is in the audience, and they've been doing a stellar job of gathering data through a survey with regard to parking, where we need it, when we need it, how we need it, and yes, yes, yes to all three questions. So I think in the future we are going to see an expansion of parking. I don't know where, and I think we'll see in the future you know, a shuttle bus of some sort. I will tell you that parking revenue right now at Whitecrest is up by $35,000 this season alone. We have two kiosks up there that now take a credit card, and you can pay to park, use your credit card, slip it into the kiosk, and you're good for the day. A lot of people said that wouldn't work, and it's working beautifully. We also have a kiosk that's sized just right for people with disabilities. So I'm very proud of some of those things.
Good evening. I'm Pat DeFrancesco, 75 Joshua Cook Road. I've been a non-resident taxpayer since 1985 and a member of this group since yesterday.
Welcome, sir.
I'm also on the board of directors of the Cape Cod Ocean Community, a nonprofit organization focused on trying to improve beach safety in any way we can in terms of fundraising and awareness and detection and surveillance. My question is the Board of Selectmen actively involved? Is there any current activity that the Board of Selectmen is doing in terms of beach safety?
We joined with other towns to participate at a small cost to us in a study that's being done by Woods Hole Oceanographic. They are testing every single shark monitoring device that is out there. And
those results are going to come out in September?
That's correct. But I think on the good side of awareness, and I said this earlier before the meeting started, it took a fatality in Wellfleet to really make all of us realize that, you know, we're working with a wild environment here. It's been here, it's always been here, and nobody should have blinders on when it comes to, just even walking in the woods. So I'm really, pleased. I think the lifeguards have been trained to the max with regard to emergency. I myself took a Stop the Bleed course. I hope I never have to do it because I could barely, so it's, it took a fatality, unfortunately, in Wellfleet to really make us realize, wow, this is happening. I do not see the federal government changing, the culling or the not culling of seals happening anywhere in the near future. And I certainly can tell you that the Cape Cod National Seashore is against anything, killing anything out in the water, shark or seal. So we've got to deal with this. And I do believe that nature will find a balance. We talked about it with the bees and all that stuff. Nature finds its own balance. There was a sighting and a report of an orca whale off of Chatham. If we had 3 orca whales off down here on the Cape, we wouldn't have a shark problem. I love that idea.
So at Newcomb Hollow, where I've been swimming for 71 years, I just use it differently. And, everything's changing.
Right.
And I'm still loving being in the water there and being on the beach, and then I go and swim in the pond, take a nice long swim. It's so terrible. In other words, I have changed my behavior on a beach that I've been on my whole life. I wallow in the shallows, and I get to be in the salt water, and people are much more careful.
Right.
And we're going to have to do a whole lot of this in a whole lot of different ways with the way things are going, and I'm just like, bring it on, and I'm trying to pay attention.
Right. It's got to be multifaceted.
Right.
And just know our group, the Cape Cod Ocean Community, is about fundraising, and we're here to help. We don't want to increase taxes by any means, but if there's a pilot program out there that makes sense to the Woods Hole Group or whatever, that we're all about protection and safety, and we're happy to get involved.
And thank you, I have your number.
But we have gotten some state funding. Our beach administrator, Suzanne Grote Thomas, has been very active. We have a terrain vehicle that can go up the dunes. Probably people in this room know these things, the smart buoy. So we're doing what we can.
Great. Yes, sir, we have 2 more questions, and we'll let the last 2 people speak. Go ahead, sir.
Robert Raymond, Ocean View Drive. For most of the year, I'm in Key Biscayne, Florida, and both my homes have a lot of bicyclers, some of whom are very talented, some of whom are very scary. we kill a fair number of them in Key Biscayne every year inadvertently. And I've always wondered, because Coca-Cola had a program to help towns convert abandoned rail lines into bike paths, I've always wondered why our bike path doesn't go all the way to Provincetown. Must be a legal reason.
Because a lot of the parts of that bike trail have been sold to private owners.
Private property.
And in fact, part of where the old railroad was is going to potentially be a 2-mile extension of the bike path from Lookout Hollow, where it now ends, to Route 6, which is part of what's so controversial.
Right.
But in any case, that's the reason. It's because people, bought up parts of it.
I'm sure we've looked at maybe taking it, compensating the people for a little part of it to run the bike path.
Well, that wouldn't, I think that would be the state agency that would do that.
Eminent domain, you can't do it, it has to be the state.
Or maybe the park.
No, the state.
In Truro, there's a whole housing development, an entire housing development that's on the rail line.
So we need a tunnel. Not only onto Cape Cod, but through Truro. The second question, I pay Comcast a lot of money for internet and TV in Florida every year, and our community of 1,100 units had a contract with them which expired this year. It was a terrible contract, and we decided to reach out to some people that have expertise in such matters, and they came in, and they brought in 4 other people to bid against Comcast to get some competition. Hotwire, Verizon, AT&T, I forget who the others were that were approached. But once there was some competition, things changed dramatically. Comcast won the contract, but we now, for what we paid for non-high def television, because the person negotiating didn't know what HD meant, we now have high definition television, many more channels. We have internet. They've rewired everybody in the community with fiber optics for ultra high definition, ultra speed internet. And if anybody provides any new service in competition with Comcast, during that 10-year period, they have to match it. So if the 5G network is online within the next 5 or 6 or 7 years, they have to provide that to us as well. We now pay less than half of what we paid for low-definition television. So I'm wondering, I gather we're in the process of negotiating a 10-year deal with Comcast. I'm wondering if we're reaching out to outsiders to help or looking to our members of our community as to what they need and what they'd like.
Do you know?
We've gotten quite a few letters. The Select Board has gotten like a lot of letters from people on Lieutenant Island, and we do have this contract negotiation coming up. And what you said interests me a great deal, and I'm glad this is being videoed, and I'm glad that there are other Select Board members here, and although we can't deliberate on it, I'm looking forward to doing so at a meeting in the near future.
I'll also say that, you know, we in general on the Lower Cape have been trying to increase our broadband.
What's that?
But, you know, like everybody else, we're all held hostage by these companies.
Right.
You know, we really are. So you just hope for the best. I mean, even the town's service and internet connection is, you know.
Well, this company, Hotwire, is expanding rapidly in wealthy communities in the South, especially Florida. And I think they'd probably love to get a toehold in New England.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. Last one.
Yes, Wayne Clough, Priscilla Road. Actually, I used to be the president of this organization when I was a non-resident. I'm a resident as of last October, so. And I am also joined by Dale Donovan, who's also on our committee. I just wanted to let you thank you all for participating in the survey. Up to today, we have close to 1,000 responses to the survey you get with your tax bills. Over 60% of those are non-resident, and we're still getting more at the beach office from those people that are just buying weeklies or what have you, but there's only been about 50 people that have responded to that, but the residents and non-residents have done a great job. If you're interested in what we're doing, the best summary we have so far is the June 11th Selectmen's meeting, made a half-an-hour presentation. You can go to the site, watch it on video, and you can also go to our website where all our meeting minutes are, and most of our video meetings are. Some of them didn't get
Tell
video.
them what the name of the committee is so they
Oh,
can
yeah.
find it on the...
Yeah, Wellfleet Parking Task Force number 2.
Okay.
It's under the committee area. But if you haven't taken the survey yet, there are cards back here that tell you how to do that online. Or you just go to the town website. It's right on the front, under the news section. Also keep an eye out for once all the results are in. We're planning to have a forum early September to try to get as many people that we can that are non-residents while they're still here. And I just wanted to share a little bit as of yesterday, excuse me, as of last Sunday. I suggest if you're not going to the beach because you don't think there is parking, there is parking. There's been a total of 57 beach days so far this year. Cahoon Hollow, obviously, or the Beachcomber is the most popular. That's filled up 36 days. Next most popular is Newcomb. We cannot expand Newcomb despite what we'd like to do that. Actually, a third of it's already owned by the seashore. We have to get a special permit every 5 years. They've been only filled up 24 days. Whitecrest is only filled up 8 days. And McGuire Landing, also known as LeCounts Hollow, 1 day. So if you haven't been going to the beach, go to the beach. And also we got a lot of commentary. We got close to, I think we're up to over 400 comments that we're summarizing. And there have been results already. I think Dale was the one that introduced these parking units that are at the Whitecrest to the town, and they ended up buying a different unit that works with the current systems they have. They also, if you haven't been there, the residents are limited to the front side, or we're limiting the front side to the residents only, which was one of the requests. And we have been monitoring the buses. There's a whole bus information I can give you, but the busiest day was obviously Sunday, July 6th. We had 31 buses. But a lot of fallacies about the buses have been dispelled by this study. There are absolutely no bus companies that will pick you up here. It's always a charter bus. So it's a family, an alumni group, something like that. It's been doing for 20 or 30 years. And the police did a phenomenal job this year. There's actually an article in the Cape Cod Times about our note, what a great job they did about monitoring the inflow, outflow, and the crowds with an additional police presence. So thank you again. And again, if you haven't taken the survey, feel free to, and keep an eye out for the forum on parking.
Thank you. So thank you very, very much for your coming out, for your questions, and now there's time if you want to come speak to the select people yourselves individually. Thank you very much for the evening. Thanks.
Thank you very much.